I thought if I was lucky to get one season out of it,
Yeah.
I thought that'd be really cool. I suppose people like myself who, when I played sport growing up, I didn't tell anyone that I was bisexual or anything about myself. I just kept that hidden well into to my adult age. Jumped onto the, as you said, the Net Sticks and Chill podcast, which was really cool as well because one of the hosts on that, Paletti, is a non-binary person as well. So in 2015, when I was 31, I came out publicly as bi. It was almost like finding a community for me. Welcome back to the Pride and Puck podcast. This is episode 25 of season 3. You can find us at Pride Puck Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads, and also on YouTube. So please jump over to the YouTube, give it a subscribe, a like, and some comments. This episode is a little bit different. We see on the screen here, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see a familiar face on the screen, a former guest, Kade Matthews, who had this idea that why not put me in the hot seat for the quarter century mark? Good morning, Kade. We finally got here after a bit of a bit of an episode yesterday.
Yeah, so some behind the scenes action for everyone. You know, it's a professional fit out for both of us. We had mic problems and video problems and all sorts of problems, but we've overcome the problems to do this episode to bring some Pride Puck podcast to everyone.
Yeah, we have. So Kade will be the host for today, and I'll hand it over to Kade now, and Kade will run the show, and I'll be sitting here as a guest, and hopefully I've got some interesting things to say about myself. But I'll hand it over to Kade. Maybe Kade, you can just let people know who you are again before we kick it off.
Yeah. So I my name is Kade Matthews. I use he/him pronouns. I was back on episode 2, right at the start, the early days. I founded a queer ice hockey club called the Southern Lights Ice Hockey Club. I was involved with Harbour Lights Ice Hockey Club. I coach, I play. I coach and played last night. So, you know, lost both games, but, you know, let's not go into that. And in my day job, I also work a lot in like queer sport for a charity called Proud to Play, who's sort of supported the hockey scene and supported this podcast a bit and all sorts of stuff. So I live and breathe queer sport and energy. So that's my life. So I'm really glad to be here. And when I was talking to Doogie about what to do for episode 25, a quarter of a century, I sort of thought, like, what right does Doogie have to just interview us and not be a guest on his own show? And, you know, I sort of thought it's time to even it up a little bit and to hear from the man himself in the background. Are you nervous?
Yeah, I was yesterday when we initially went to go to do this yesterday and we had our dramas. I said to my wife yesterday, I said, I'm actually nervous. And she looked at me like I was a weirdo and said, what are you talking about? Like, you do all these interviews, you've been on radio, etc. I don't know. It's just, I don't know. It's just probably natural nerves, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I've got some real gotcha questions to really, you know, get you cancelled on YouTube and really get you demonetized and stuff. So, you know, just be careful. They're really hard hitting. So, like, let's just jump into it. Like, we're at episode 25 now, where it's been going along for a while. You've interviewed people from all over Australia and the world, told heaps of queer stories. Did you think it would get this far? Did you think you'd be here today being interviewed on your own podcast?
Simple answer, no. Not at all. I didn't think I'd get past probably. I thought if I was lucky to get one season out of it, I thought that'd be really cool because I didn't think that a lot of queer people would want to get on the screen. And now I suppose the first season wasn't on a screen. It was just audio. And I've sort of gone back through the back catalogue and put some of the season ones on YouTube. But I didn't think people would want to get on and tell their story because a lot of people are, I suppose, with the history, Kade, of not possibly being accepted from their families and their friends and things like that. Maybe they don't want to be out there and tell their stories. But I'm amazed at how many people have actually reached out to me and wanted to come on the podcast. It's amazing. Like every time, so at the end of season 1, end of season 2, I put out something on Instagram, a story or Facebook or whatever, asking for guests to come on. I get that many DMs straight away, and within weeks, I've pretty much got every month sort of booked out, and people wanted to come on. So I'm surprised. I didn't think I'd get this far, 25, and I was on Joy not long ago, a radio station here in Australia. And I said on Joy, if I'll keep it going, as long as people want to come on and keep telling their stories, I don't see any reason why it can't keep going. But yeah, I didn't think I'd get to 25. I didn't think I'd be sitting here talking to you at the quarter century mark, but here we are.
Yeah, well, I think there's a bit, sorry, I might go into some of my non-hockey hats here, but like I recently did a Pride motorsport exhibit for Racing Pride in the UK at the National Motorsport Museum. Go check it out if anyone's in the UK. But what I've realized is, like, as we know, our queer history is really not told. Our queer stories are not told as prominently as they could, especially historically. There's a lot of missing stories from, the AIDS epidemic and sort of stuff like that. But I think especially when it comes to sports, because sports haven't been for us, there's very limited sports media. There's some, some big orgs like, Outsports and stuff like that telling stories. But once you sort of cut those top off, and especially when you get down to community level of talking about community grassroots sport, there's a real lack of stories. And there's so many good stories though. Like everyone we have in Southern Lights is all, I couldn't find this space. I played as a kid and then I found this space. I didn't feel comfortable entering a team. So I think that it's great that you've got the community sport stories there coming to you. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that I wanted to aim on as well when I started it, when I had the idea. I didn't want to have, I suppose, these famous sort of professional athletes, etc., who are important. Obviously, they're the most visible for our community, so they're the most important. But I just felt like there were so many of those stories at the grassroots level. I suppose people like myself, who when I played sport growing up, I didn't tell anyone that I was bisexual or anything about myself. I just kept that hidden well into to my adult age. But and I the idea with the podcast too, I didn't want to have, and I thought maybe people might have been standoffish when I approached people or announced that I was doing the podcast about, oh, what's this going to be about? Are you going to be trying to get clickbait or whatever? So the way I set up the podcast was I just put it into the guest court. So I'll throw the tennis ball into their court and they'll hit it back to me with whatever they feel like they want to put on the podcast. So they basically run the podcast and we just have a chat, have a laugh and just talk about their journey.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to do it too. Like when I've been part of media sort of stuff, it's about giving people a space to tell their stories and not, not necessarily like forcing them into narratives. There's nothing I hate more in the media than a question that, especially when you've said, I can't talk about that, and you get one. And I've had that a few times and it's a little bit uncomfortable, and just having a conversation really helps, I think. So like, I think you're really on top of that, like through your storytelling. Like, you've done a whole heap of stuff through Melbourne Mustangs here. You've done the Net Sticks and Chill podcast, done Inner Sanctum, you've done Hockey Hype Australia, you've done all this sort of media work. What got you interested in media work in the beginning, even outside of this podcast?
I had no interest in any sort of media stuff until about 2010, when I came across the Melbourne Mustangs. They were doing a exhibition series, and they were looking to get a license into the Australian Ice Hockey League. And I went along and I watched a game, and then a friend of mine, we went to their first season, etc. And I started up a blog, and I don't even know where I got the idea to start a blog, but I just felt like I needed to start a blog to talk about, I suppose, maybe this sport that nobody knows about, but I found like really cool. So I started up a blog, which turned into something a lot bigger, where I ended up running it for 5 years. And I had people from all across Australia, different states, that were writing about the teams, and I had people from the US and someone from the UK, and then New Zealand got involved. So that's where it all started with the media side of things, and it just gradually grew from there. Where I've done that for 5 years, and then I had a bit of a break and was sort of just a fan, not really doing a lot. And then I got approached to write for the Inner Sanctum, to write about hockey again recently, and started doing that, and then jumped onto the, as you said, the Net Sticks and Chill podcast, which was really cool as well, because one of the hosts on that, Paletti, is a non-binary person as well. So that was really cool to jump on there with Paletti and talk about hockey. And then, yeah, it just grew from there, where I started Hockey Hype Australia, done that for a year, moved away from that. Now just sort of doing my own thing, where on YouTube, trying to maybe do a little bit of documentaries and stuff like that. I just did one on Amy Stevens from Southern Lights recently, spending a day with Amy. Yeah, so that's where it all started. And I just felt like I had sort of enough media behind me where I could do something for the community. And that's where the idea of the podcast sort of started. Once I seen Southern Lights and Harbour Lights, etc., starting to grow and really sort of capture the community, I felt like, okay, there's something here. And I felt like there was a gap. There was something missing where nobody was doing it. So I felt like with my sort of media background, and also me being publicly, I suppose a lot of people, get a lot of messages saying that you're very visibly bi, and I think it's important to be visible if you can, for the community. So that's where it all started, and that's where I am now.
Yeah, well, I think it really is. Like, I last night had a message from a radio show here in Australia. I won't say which one because I don't know if they want to be mentioned or not. But they were looking for buy out sporting icons, and I said, well, there's me. But, but I don't think this is the level that you're looking for. And like, part of that conversation was, I know plenty of, queer athletes, non-binary athletes. In my work, we deal with the Thrive with Pride program for the Australian Institute of Sport, and like, I know Olympians and Paralympians who are queer. But I said, actually, like, realized, I said I had to get back to them on that front, because I think, once again, bi visibility and bi-erasure are very real things. And I said, I think the media narrative a lot of the time, once again, is one of, they came out as gay, they came out as lesbian, they came out, well, usually not a lesbian. Usually, once again, women's sports are so much stronger for our rights and protecting those in a lot of areas anyway. And I was trying to think of some like really prominent biathletes, and the list was really short compared to even our gay athletes. So I think that bi visibility part is a really strong thing, that other people are there as well. So, it's great to have that. And I know that you've done a lot of work with, Melbourne Bi Network previously and sort of stuff like that. So it's great to see a bicon around. So, we went through this journey of, like, you've kind of went, the Mustangs, started a blog. I'm picturing it in my mind that it's like doogiehockey.livejournal.com. It's the early days. My team lost. Here's a poem. The emo days. Yeah. But yeah, and we're kind of seeing that journey, and like that's sort of really meaningful. Like, I guess one thing I wanted that I didn't have on our question list, like, being as part of Southern Lights and seeing Harbour Lights start, it was very much for me from the inside. Like, I'd played hockey for a number of years. To give a really quick recap of mine, like, I had a major depressive period and stuff like that. I found hockey. I found my a club called Melbourne Ice Wolves, and then I wanted to sort of combine my love of community and my love of the sport into something and provide that platform. But I guess I've never really looked at that from an outsider perspective, because I've always been inside. So, like, what did that look like to you, I guess, as someone who, knew the hockey scene, but this thing came through, I guess. I don't really know what I'm asking there, but like, what did that look like? Like, how did that make you feel? Like, how did that?
I reckon it was probably like a beacon, I suppose, like a flashing beacon to me, because I'd played sport. Like, sport's been part of my life since I was little. So growing up, played basketball, cricket, Aussie rules, played soccer, playing hockey for the first time soon, which I'm guessing we'll get into at some stage. But it was almost like a beacon for me. So in 2015, when I was 31, I came out publicly as bi. So it was almost like finding a community for me. So growing up, in when I say 18, 19, 20, that sort of age, I would do things, I suppose, just away from everyone. So if I wanted to go out to a bar or a club or something like that or whatever, and hit my queer identity, nobody knew about it, in the closet, put it to that side. And then once I finish that, I'll come over here and live my life with all my friends and family. So once I came out publicly, to see Southern Lights and Harbour Lights emerge, it was almost like a flashing beacon where I can find community over there. I can find a place within the sport that I love, that I put so much effort into in terms of media, promoting it, telling someone, here, go watch this, go watch that. You're going to love it. You're going to want to pick up a stick and play. To finally have something visible that I can navigate towards and find community. It was really cool. And it was like a moment, it was like, oh, this is awesome. Now I can really find a place where I can be myself within the sport, and just get love back. And that's basically what I've got. Even since starting the podcast, I've become friends with so many different people with Southern Lights, like yourself, like Brendan Parsons, people like that who I see at the hockey now, give them a hug, all that sort of stuff. So for me, especially living regional in Victoria, it can be very isolated in regional areas for queer people. So to have that and the visibility of the clubs, it was about finding community for me.
Yeah, because I always go into, like, I think the bi coming out journey is very different to the gay or lesbian or even the trans experience. Like, I always say that, and maybe this sort of compartmentalizing sort of thing was, like, I as a teen thought I was gay, then I fell in love with a woman and kind of went, oh, it was just a phase. You know, like,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then it didn't go away. And then I sort of put it all together. There's a lot of gray parts of the bi identity, I think, of like going, it's easy. No, it's not easy being gay, but it's easy, I think, easy to find a binary when you're trying to navigate who you are. And there's a lot of different facets and stuff like that to a bi identity of, I think a lot of people go through sort of, having heteroromantic and homosexual and sort of stuff like that, sort of combinations. And sometimes that, I think, is sort of leaning towards heteronormative. And sometimes it's sort of, sometimes it's true. Sometimes that is how people feel. But I think that one of the really core things, which really resonated with what you said when that was a beacon, is at Southern Lights, when we set it up, like, we just didn't want that to be a question. Like, we're an LGBT inclusive club. We really wear that, it's on our website, it's on our jerseys, we've got the flag, we've got this, that's what it's all about. But like, we don't check if people are queer or anything. We did do an anonymous survey years ago that said like 75% are queer, but I've had people have that journey within the club too. And now I've been around this space, I think I am bi, or I think I am this sort of thing. And they've had that space there. So I think that's, that those journeys happen within the club as well, which I think is really amazing.
Yeah. And I've met people through Southern Lights, which is really cool, where they'll say, oh yeah, I'm bi too. Because it's always one of those things where even though you are bi and you're part of the community, there's so much of the community where you feel like you shouldn't be there. So it's almost like that imposter syndrome where you feel like, okay, I know I'm bi, I know I'm part of the community, and I've got these lived experiences, but should I really still be in that space, or should that space be for someone else? So when you're arriving at Southern Lights and speaking to other people, you find out, oh, they're bi as well, and they're living their best life. So it's really cool.
Yeah. So first game, May 17th. I've got it marked in my calendar. It's Ida Hobbit, so you're playing that well. You know, I like a bit of marketing for a debut.
Yeah.
Have you got all your gear?
I've got to buy a helmet. I've missed. Yeah. Oh, well, I'm gonna go full cage.
Fishbowl? Oh, full cage. Full cage.
Yeah.
No, great. Can't mess up that pretty face. I've got a bit of chipped tooth and stuff like that. It's fine. Yeah.
This is my money maker, Kade.
That's right. That's right. You've got to appear on camera. I'm just the host for this episode. You've got to do it all the other episodes.
So yeah, I've got a lot of secondhand stuff, purchase things sort of cheap, obviously. I've actually missed a couple of training sessions, which I'm shattered about. But we've got a training session on the May 10th, just prior to the game. So I'll head up to Reservoir for that. I've got the helmet's the only thing I have to purchase, which I'm going to buy brand new. I've spoken to a few people who are saying that you're better off just purchasing a helmet brand new. The other stuff you can sort of get. So I've done that, but really exciting. So I'm after talking about it and watching, like I watch a ridiculous amount of hockey. It's it's turned into the number one sport for me. I think it's the greatest sport in the world. So to get out there and actually play, it's really exciting. And to play for the Southern Lights, it's extra special. Yeah.
So like becoming a player, have you been doing any? Have you had any practice in the backyard? Have you had any? Have you got your synthetic ice out there in the regional area to try?
I've gone very old school, and I put down a piece of cardboard in the garage.
Nice.
and chuck the puck on it and try and do a little bit of hand skills. It's funny because I actually posted in the group chat for the team yesterday a YouTube channel with off ice training skills for people who might not be able to get to the rink, because the rink's 2 hours from my house, so it's a trek. It's a trek to get up there and play. So yeah, been out in the garage a little bit. Not shooting pucks because I don't think the neighbours would be too keen to have pucks banging against garages. But I've got a laneway at the back of my house, so which that helps as well to get out there. And I was actually thinking about, and I don't even know if this helps, Kade, but just getting out and rollerblading in the backyard with a stick. If that helps, because I've got no ice around here. But yeah, I've gone old school with the cardboard and a bit of stick handling in the garage.
It doesn't help me, put it that way. That was my COVID thing of like, I'm just going to buy some inlines. I'm going to skate around. I could be wrong because I was very bad at it, but the edges on roller was very different. But like they will help with like your stride and your balance and all this other stuff. So you'll get plenty of positives out of it. Stopping is pretty different and stuff like that. But you've got time ahead to nail that stuff now.
The boards will be which helps me stop, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Play defense and just stop into someone. You'll be fine.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Ease into them. You'll be fine. That's probably what I did for my first. I called it checking. It was really just not stopping. Yeah. So, like, you've done a lot of interviews now. You've talked to a lot of people. You've heard a lot of stories. What has stood out that makes hockey meaningful for people? Or on the inverse of that, like what's tricky about hockey for people? Like what are these themes that you're sort of seeing in these stories?
I suppose it's finding that acceptance, I think, is probably the biggest thing that I see come through with a lot of the people that I interview. it's stepping away from something that a lot of them loved so much. And especially when I speak to people from Canada or the US, especially because obviously in Australia, hockey's not, it's a minority sport here.
Yeah, I think we've got 4,000 registered players, 5,000 maybe in all of Australia.
So the thing that I find is, especially through season 2 and into season 3, is it's especially Canadians. It's that old story of when you're a little kid, you're born with skates on your feet type of thing. So some of them wouldn't play for an extended period of time, and then it's through these inclusive clubs that they come back to the sport, and not just to the sport. They find community, and you can see the happiness in them. So it's even safe, not even just through the interviews. I follow them on social media or become Facebook friends with these people, and you can see the happiness and joy of being part of these inclusive clubs where they're finding themselves again, and they're finding that community through sport, which they loved growing up, but they might have left from when they were a teenager at high school until early 20s or late 20s or etc. That's probably the biggest theme that I see coming through when I talk to people, is they felt like they couldn't be themselves, and then they come back to the sport at a later age. And I suppose what I find the most amazing thing is when I talk to trans athletes through this podcast who obviously they weren't themselves when they were younger, and then they go through the entire transition phase where they become who they are, and then they're playing the sport that they loved when they were a kid, like as their authentic self and who they are and who they were born to be. I think that's amazing. And that's one of the things that I absolutely love when I do this podcast.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to. I'm heading over to Seattle Pride Classic with our Southern Lights captain Rob in June, and I'm really looking forward to meeting a bunch of like the team trans players and the trans wave players and stuff like that, because I just think like they're just doing amazing things. Finding a fully trans space too is like amazing. Like the fact that they all do different tournaments and they all get together and do these things. There's the Minnesota team trans. There's different areas of them as well. Like it's just amazing. And like I said, for work, build these queer spaces in sport. I'd love to have the capacity to do that, or to help someone empowered to do that in Australia. It's just really amazing.
And I think you would see it with your work that you do, Kade, as well. Like it's not just creating a space for people to play. It's these clubs around the world are changing the culture. Like they're changing how people view the sport, which I think is really important, because hockey, for one, it's been a very masculine sport, and there's the culture around it has been like that for a long time. And not just for queer people, like it's never really been a sport for Black people too. So that's they're changing the culture. And when I spoke to my last guest, Nora from Queer Hockey Nova Scotia, they are very heavily in recognising their local Indigenous communities and the Black community, etc. So it's changing the culture as well with hockey, with these clubs as well. It's not just creating a space for queer people to go play. It's shifting the culture. Yeah,
and I think intersectionality is a really big thing that I do in my day job that's really interesting in hockey. We had a training session at Southern Lights the other day, and Grant, who's a local para ice hockey player, for the people out there in podcast land, I think there's probably 50, 60 para ice hockey players in Australia. Like we're talking really small numbers. But Grant is a queer man with a disability. And we had our Southern Lights training session over here. We usually have one team down one end, one team down the other end of the ice. And Grant was just like looking for ice time. They're really new to the sport. And I shouldn't say no, but I didn't want to say no. I just kind of went like, you're a queer ice hockey player. You belong on the ice with us. But I did have a chat to him and kind of went, look, I've never trained able-bodied players with people playing para because they're kind of different sports very much in a lot of the positioning. But I said, like, let's get you out on the ice and like, let's see how this can work. And generally the way I did it was we had sort of people working with him when I was doing other stuff, or doing sort of focus drills, or, as a coach, instead of me just passing it directly out to a player, I'd pass it to Grant first and pass it along to a player. But, Grant was in the change room with the other lights players, exploring that identity. So it's really good because I when you sort of touched on these sort of stories and finding place, I often talk about when people come into lights, especially if they sort of came in without, everyone sort of knows who we are, but some people, I guess, might, not that they're bad at understanding it, but might not get to the degree of why. And often I speak to queer people, I think often need to name what it is. And we've got trauma in sport. We're being rejected from spaces. We're being turned away by friends. We're being outright discriminated against. And that's traumatic. And you just can't expect someone to go back into a space where they've experienced trauma and just be like, go join Joe Blue's B-League team, because that's probably the exactly same environment that they've been rejected from and have trauma from. So it's been really powerful to be, like, it's great to see these faces and at Southern Lights when someone, if someone comes into the club, builds their sporting identity and sort of then feels confident to move off to some other team playing at a higher level or whatever, to me, that's a win. Like, if someone has built that confidence in sport as a queer person that they want to expand their horizons, fantastic. And I think that that's a lot of the work that the other sort of people that you spoke to on this podcast has. It's been about, I found their confidence and they've found this sort of space for them to belong. And now I don't want to say all of them, I don't want to speak for people, but now they're processing that trauma and getting over that trauma. They've found that space. They've found that love of the sport again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've spoken about this, I've mentioned it, I think maybe a couple of times on the podcast, like an experience in it. It's funny how it just sticks with you. I think I was 16 and I was playing senior Aussie rules here, senior footy. And one of the players that I played with just outright openly talking to me about going gay bashing around Melbourne. And this would have been 2002. 2000, sorry. Around there. This is an older gentleman. And now that I look back on it, that's probably set me back in my journey along, like as a 16-year-old, hearing that, I was like, okay, that's probably set me back on my journey a long, long time. And even in sport. So to have these spaces where people can build up the confidence and be safe in sport and not have to deal with that sort of discrimination sitting inside a locker room with a teammate that's supposed to be your teammate, just outright openly saying that they go around gay bashing. It's super important. And I think, like, I'm not sure, Kade, but the Southern Lights could be a vehicle as well for people who aren't out at all, but that's the one spot they can be out. But it gives them the confidence to go from being out at Southern Lights to being out to their family or their friends.
Yeah, and that's definitely happened. Like, I've had people, even in our first team, that have had that journey. People that are more recent that have had that journey that have kind of just given us that feedback. And, like, honestly, I think, going back to, going to loop this back around, but when you sort of talked about, people saying they're going to go gay bashing and stuff like that, like, hockey has been a vehicle for even myself. Like, when we had the marriage equality rallies here back in the day, when we were slowly inching towards, won't say referendum because it wasn't that, but like my now husband and I were walking down sort of Elizabeth Street one night, And some guy, like, it wasn't super violent, so some drunk guy came up with her and just shoved me in the back. And, this was one evening, and then was just like calling, he actually called us gay-bos, which I thought was hilarious. and we thought it was both hilarious. Me and my partner smiled, and he threatened to like kick my husband's teeth in and sort of stuff like that. And like, I was just drunk, and he, pushed me around a bit, and I was, ready to. If he did anything else, I was ready to go. But we just crossed the road and stuff like that. But that story I actually sort of tell, because that was sort of when I was playing hockey at Melbourne Ice Wolves. And I use that story occasionally in my Southern Lights work or in my Ice Wolves stuff, because part of that, like when leading up to marriage equality and stuff like that, like a lot of people like going like, oh, you get this and you're kind of done kind of thing. And I'm like, no, like this sort of violence still happens. It happens on a regular basis. Unfortunately for our friends in like the US and stuff, getting more regular, it seems, in a lot of spaces. But this is happening all over the world. There's still 76 odd countries where homosexuality is illegal. So we're not anywhere near done. And we have to advocate for ourselves. And I think that Southern Lights being that space allows people to see the advocacy and the support and everything that we have, and sort of feel at home and have that confidence that if they do come out and face violence, or if they do come out and face rejection from family, they've still got friends, support, and so on in that journey. But I think that stuff like this is also part of that picture. So like, I think that through your stories, you're advocating and you're community building. Like what do you see the podcast's role in that space?
I never thought it would be that. As I said, I didn't think I'd probably get past season 1, but I feel like it is building a community, because it's connecting different people all over the world. Like, I suppose, like, even an example is Stuart Ridley from Harbour Lights, been a massive supporter of the podcast, massive supporter of myself. Going over to Seattle Pride Classic, which you're going to do as well, and seeing them connect with people that have been on my podcast. So like Seattle Pride Hockey Association, they've been more than welcoming to come on my show and share things. And it's just connecting all these different people who they send me photos. So Ko Laurie as well from this tournament has everything, who I recently got some merch delivered from Canada. It's seeing Ko connect with other people that have been guests, and they take selfies and they'll send it to me, and I'll chuck it up on the socials. So it's a form of community building 100%, because all these people now who are meeting each other, they're thinking about the podcast as well. Oh, you were on the podcast. And so it is building that community, but it is also something I didn't think it would be. And I'm proud of it. It is a bit of advocacy as well to get these voices and these stories out there. And I think I'm excited for the rest of season 3, because I've got people lined up from the US who are trans hockey players, and especially what's happening over there. I think it's super important to get their stories and their thoughts onto the podcast when it's all basically chaos at the moment over there.
Yeah, I do have to say, I've got announced as the captain for Grinya's Gladiators at the Seattle Pride.
Yay!
And Vanessa Vargas is in my team. And Vanessa reached out and was like, "You've been on Pride Puck podcast. We've both been there. We're going. Let's do this." So the team building that you bring, to this space. I think it's really important to advocate, especially for those people, and build those connections, because there's been I think it's very similar to what you said, is when we're in this sort of queer hockey space, I just follow people on Instagram now. And sometimes I don't remember why. Well, I remember, I know why, but also I'm like, oh, what league are this person that I'm following associated with, or like, but like, I might not have ever spoken to them, but they kind of know who I am, and I know who they are, and I know that they're doing something in Minnesota or Nova Scotia, or there's also San Francisco and the Quakes and stuff like that there, and it's just like good to see what. Also, really interesting to see different cultures of teams around the world. I reckon every team's got like really slightly different lenses on things, which is like obviously ours in Australia is because the sport is so small here, where I found that queers are really good in niche sports spaces because you've got a lot of control over the space as a whole, or what you do has a lot of influence out. So when we made Southern Lights, we had detractors being like, why do you need this? Why does this exist? Like, we're all one big community, all this sort of stuff. But I think people have really seen us advocate for people, and that's sort of brought people in and just going, look, we just want to play hockey, and we just want to have this space so more people can play hockey. But we haven't been in those big systems. Like, we're not getting rejected from AA, AAA hockey as a team coming out. Like, most of us had never skated till we were like over 25. So I think that influence, and I think like the podcast, like, it's been really good at shining light on the experiences of others beyond our thing. And I think that that's going to be really important with telling more trans stories because I think that one of the misconceptions that still really exist in the world is that trans people are a monolith. that the trans identity, like, people affirm their gender in all different ways and styles, and what might be a really affirming journey for someone is very different for someone else, and I think that really adds complexities into hockey teams. Like, it's pretty simple for us, but for many of others in the general community, someone that might appear to be more masculine, but they're at the start of their journey, or maybe that's where their journey is, but they identify as non-binary, or a woman, or a man, or like whatever they want to identify as. I think that showing that sort of spectrum and identities is really important. So I really look forward to seeing that.
It was one of the things when I started the podcast I wanted to focus on. From the community, there was two aspects of it, which was, one was the trans community, and also the intersex community. And I haven't had a guest on from the intersex community, so I really would love to do that, because I think they're the two communities that the podcast really wanted to highlight and focus on and give a voice to, because there's so much misinformation, there's so many lies, there's so much attacking of the communities. So it was a real focus of me to, especially for those two communities, for the podcast.
Yeah. And once again, like the intersex community, we use it in our statistics in Australia. There's more intersex people out there than there are people with red hair in Australia, at least. So they really do exist, but that journey itself is very different, like is often clumped in with trans rights. And obviously there are sometimes when they're being blocked from sport, that can be a similar struggle, but very different community. I always go, one thing that blows people's minds when I do talk is that there are straight people in the LGBT community, LGBTIQ community. They might be intersex, and they might be just men who have sex with men who might traditionally we view as bi or gay, but like if their label is straight, that's valid, and that's their identity. But from a health perspective and stuff like that the MSM acronym is real, and we have to sort of consider that is in our big picture of planning and stuff like that as well. And we have to treat those stories and identities as people and unique and special. So I'm really hoping that some of those discussions happen, because I want to hear those stories.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
So I guess, what's next for the podcast? Where are we heading? Like, you sort of touched on telling more trans stories. Do you have any like ideas you want to try? Like, you sort of done some documentary stuff with Amy, who I promised to be a courier for Seattle merchandise all over there. So yeah. And I think someone else heard me. It might have been Amy's friend or partner. Sorry, Amy. I'm not sure their status. But so I might be ferrying some Seattle Pride jersey for Amy's for the focus of your documentary. But like, are you sort of trying to tell more stories like that? Is that separate to the podcast? Trying to build a queer hockey empire?
I don't know about empire.
It's very lucrative.
Just on Seattle as well. I think there is a rumor there's a PWHL team possibly on the horizon for Seattle, so that's pretty
Amazing.
Cool. I purchased a camera recently, and I'm doing a little bit of video stuff for hockey just generally. I've got some things lined up for the Australian Ice Hockey League up in Canberra as well this season, and the Melbourne Ice. I would love to, like, the thing with Amy. I did a vlog on the Australian Women's Ice Hockey League finals, but the thing with Amy, just following Amy for the day and doing a bit of interview, that's the first sort of, I don't even know if it's a documentary. I don't know what you call it. But it was the first sort of video work that I'd done, and I found that I really enjoy it, piecing it all together and trying to tell a story that way. The podcasts obviously keep going and going, but the sort of maybe documentaries or short film type of stuff would be really cool to have associated with the podcast. So I'd love to do it with more queer people, queer clubs. I'm hoping to get up to Mardi Gras and that next year.
As a player?
Yeah. The whole
and a marcher?
yeah, everything. The whole lot.
Yeah.
All the works. Yeah. So that'd be cool to sort of document that as well. And interview some people and try and put something together. And even I'm hoping to get over to Calgary next year as well. And I've built some connections with Calgary Inclusive Hockey Association as well. So even going over there and doing that sort of stuff. So that's sort of another bit of a medium, I suppose, that I'm trying to jump into now with the video stuff. And even if it's just putting reels together of different things, I'm hoping to get some merch together for the podcast this year as well. So maybe some hoodies and some pucks and stuff like that to get a bit more visibility out there. But yeah, the video stuff is probably the other sort of aspect of the podcast going forward.
Yeah. Well, while you're talking, I'm like, should I make this commitment on camera for you? But I do have a vlogging camera and I do have some microphone sets. So when I'm in Seattle, I'll try and get some testimonials around the Pride Park podcast for you.
Yeah, hell yeah.
We'll bring it together. I'll create some content for you. We'll bring it together.
Well, I know Vanessa will be up for it. Vanessa is an absolute legend. Vanessa will be. Vanessa will be like, I'll video for you. And Vanessa's a legend.
We'll get it going. Contents. I'll just chuck a camera in someone's face and be like, hey.
Just strap it to your helmet, and that's they got no choice.
It'll be fine. Who's your pick for Stanley Cup?
It's changed through the season. At the start of the season, I picked Colorado, and then I had the Leafs making the final, but I didn't think they'd win it. But then as the season got later and later, I actually picked Tampa Bay to go all the way and win the cup. I think Tampa Bay is a really, really strong team, and they won this morning in Florida, so the series is back on.
There we go. I'll get my pick. I've got something here. Where is it? We're doing it.
Who is it? Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah.
So people can't see it. If people aren't watching on the YouTube,
it's UP. UP is here in Australia. UP is here.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about the Canadiens just quickly. I don't know if you've been to the Bell Centre. Have you been to the Bell Centre?
No, I haven't been bell center. Every time I go to the east coast of the US or anywhere near the east coast of the US, I look at the price of hockey. So I'm a West Coast hockey fan when
Yeah.
it comes to being in arenas. I've been to Calgary, I've been to and I've been to LA and Anaheim.
Yeah, the Bell Center. I was listening to it yesterday. The atmosphere, it's unreal, unreal.
Yeah, I'm definitely planning a trip. I'm not sure. Unfortunately, I want to support all my queer folks in the US and be there, but I'm not sure if another US trip's coming on the cards for a little while. It might be a European trip. So, but I'll get to Bell Center. I'll get to Madison Square Garden. Some of those at some point when I feel a little more comfortable and when prices go down a little bit, because post COVID accommodations skyrocketed and our Australian dollar is nosedived. So yeah. So I guess like you've done this, you've been telling these stories, you've heard from a lot of people. So if someone here is listening to a podcast and doesn't feel that they have a space in hockey, what's your message to them?
You do, and there are clubs out there that will welcome you in with open arms, and I say that as well. Like it's. I don't think it's just for queer people either, Kade. Like the more that I've done this podcast and more people I've spoken to, if you're queer, there's clubs, especially here in Australia and Victoria and New South Wales. There's 2 clubs that will accept you with open arms, but there's also other clubs, and you've touched on it because you've got a heavy involvement in the Melbourne Ice Wolves. They'll welcome you with open arms as well if you're a queer person wanting to play hockey. There are places for you where you can be yourself, but it's also like people who aren't queer as well, who might not like a certain culture at a certain club. There are places for you to play. And it was one of the things that's come through on the podcast when I've spoken to people is that they've got people who are straight who play, and they go across to these inclusive clubs and they sort of go, oh, this is amazing. Like, this is awesome. I love playing here, even though they're not part of the queer community. So that would be my message, that there are places for you to play hockey in different parts of the world, in Australia. And I'm not sure, Kate, if what you think, but I sort of feel like in Australia, for the most part, hockey is pretty accepting of queer people. I do get annoyed sometimes where there might be a pride game or something where they just slap on the rainbow and say, oh, look what we're doing, when they're not doing the actual groundwork and doing it the right way. But I feel like for the most part, hockey is pretty inclusive here in Australia, and there are places for you to play.
Yeah. I feel that at least, I guess there's varying degrees of that. Like, I think that from a people perspective, hockey is pretty inclusive here in Australia. It's not perfect, but because we're such a smaller niche community, you do, like, one of the lines I hear in all sport is like, everyone's welcome here, and most of the time that's not true. I think in hockey, because it's so niche, everyone's just anyone that plays hockey here is just hockey mad. Like, if you're playing hockey in Australia, and
you're a psycho.
Yeah, like, you're a psycho, but like, we've talked intersectionality before, but like, it costs a lot. Like,
Yeah.
I see some costs coming out of like Canada and US, so I'm like, that's how much it costs you to play hockey? Like,
yeah.
I want to cry. I'm like,
it's true. It's so true.
And I'm like, and they're like, oh, it's expensive. And I'm like, no, like, this is like, I would be skating 6 times a week if I had that. We've got very limited resources. So anyone that's like you're driving 2 hours for a game. I'm driving an hour, just over an hour to play at a local Oakley, because there's a 4-on-4 league that I was starting to play on. So the people are generally just about the hockey. That said, you will get some people that are around, but you still have a lot of people with the traditional white male hockey viewpoints. But I don't know if it's better or worse, because often, like, I see a handful of people like Trump supporters and stuff like that. I'm promoting that stuff on my social media, but I know that when I see them, they're the loveliest and supportive people. I don't know how to reconcile that. I don't know if I don't know how that fits. I don't understand it, but like when they're there, when they're in person, when we're talking, they know I'm queer. They know I do Southern Lights. They know that this is something important. That they're even supportive of that. Like they want to do this. So that's an interesting thing. But I think that where it sort of falls down is there's still, I guess it's not a queer identity thing, it's an inclusion thing. Is that, and probably in your experience in sport as well, is that Australia at a community sporting level does community sport really well and really terrible at the same time. We love having everyone involved in sport. We're a sporting nation. We see all the benefits, but at the same time, like the amount of teams, like you were saying, the amount of teams that people came to Lights and went, I love this space because it's just about community, it's about people, as opposed to other teams playing in, rec league and stuff like that, who are taking it really seriously. And I think sometimes that culture sort of goes against our queer identity as well. Like, there's still homophobia, that like a lot of throwing back to Eric Dennison's research back in 2019, 2018, like a lot of that research was done in ice hockey and has those rates of homophobia of 80% of people hearing in the last couple of weeks and stuff like that is ridiculous. That's sky high. So like, and I've had people even in Ice Wolves who have been heated in the moment and might have called people a slur. I'm sure we can imagine what that slur probably is on the ice. But the interesting thing is I've had people do that and then come up to me afterwards and said, I did this and I feel really badly about it. Like, I don't know why I did it. It's often people who have come through that AFL or footy program that it's just second nature. When they're revved up, that's what they call someone. And we've had a discussion about it, and that's been really positive. So there is this improvement. I've had people years ago who used like the slur online occasionally, just between mates and stuff, on when things were a bit more casual. And they asked me how I felt about people using the slur, and I said, well, like, and this is really a complex sort of thing. I said, look, you call me that, I know that you're a mate and you're just being an idiot and whatever. But I said, people have been beaten, people have had violence against them while that's being yelled at them. So you don't know who that is. So when you're using that against someone, especially a queer person, even if it's in jest, even if you're mates or something, that can be really traumatic. So these attitudes exist in hockey. They haven't went away, and they're definitely really prominent. But yeah, I think generally, because we've got that space to control and because Southern Lights is so prominent, we have got a really good culture, and that has came over into Ice Wolves. And I think people have seen me sort of go from Lights to Ice Wolves, and some of the other clubs have kind of went, well, people are going there because of this culture. Before Ice Hockey Victoria sort of restricted some of their grades and so on due to less ice time, we had a bit of a pipeline going for Southern Lights if you wanted to play Ice Hockey Victoria League hockey to go to Wolves and then sort of build out this stuff. And I think people saw that and kind of went, well, we want to be the club of choice. How can we do that? We want to be more inclusive. And that is a positive thing. Like, I wish they just kind of thought of that on their own. But if they're getting there and that's what they really need and they're listening and educating, then that's brilliant.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it's just socially ingrained. I think a lot of the culture around language and stuff like that. Like just a quick story. Yesterday, my wife and I went to get a coffee, and they know my wife from going in there all the time. And they'd made 2 coffees, and they made a pink one for my wife and a blue one for me. And the lady's like, blue's for the boy and the pink's for Kelly. And we sort of walked out. We sort of walked out there, and Kelly's just like, she's like, I tried to bit my tongue because I love the coffee there. And I just laughed and I said, no, it's fine. But it's just that thing where like pink's my favorite color. And it's just like, it's just so socially ingrained in people to act a certain way. And it's funny because when people say to me, why do we need pride rounds, or why do you do the podcast, or why do we need an inclusive club? I say to them, it's more than just a simple, when you hear all the time, we don't care who you sleep with. Well, that's a problem too, because you're telling people to keep it behind closed doors. We don't want to know about it. But there's more to it as well. It's how you present. It's how you want to dress. It's how you want to show up to certain spaces. It's about shifting that's the what's been ingrained in society for so long about how people should look, how people should act, how people should dress, all that sort of thing. That's why it's so important for one, I think the podcast, but also for clubs like Southern Lights and Harbour Lights and all these other inclusive clubs around the world for people to show up in certain spaces. Like when I go to a local gym here, and I had to complain because I never complained at a gym before, but I had to complain because there was a father and son making fun of me for what I wear to the gym, and the gym stamped it out straight away. But it's just those little things where these clubs are just making a space for people to be themselves and show up as they are, as their authentic self, and not have to deal with discrimination. So yeah, I think it's a lot of, and same as the language you were just talking about there, Kade. It's just the way society's been that's been ingrained in society for so long.
Yeah, and I don't think that people realize that. Yeah, okay, we can have this discussion of like, we don't want you pushing our sex. We don't need to know your sexuality or what you're doing in the bedroom or something like that. But and this is okay. But like, so if I just start talking about boyfriend, husband, trans partner, like the issues facing them, or the issues that we have, and keeping that out of it, like just talking about general experiences, are they just going to be okay with that? And my answer is generally, for someone that's saying that, is no.
Yeah.
So it's not a question about what we're doing in the bedroom. It's a question about being comfortable and out to express ourselves, and to talk about our journeys, and talk about our thoughts and challenges and hopes and dreams and all these wonderful things. And yeah, like I think that I believe, and that's why I do what I do, I believe that sport is a great way to do that, to develop communities, to build community, to provide opportunities, to provide diversity and stuff like that. And part of that is visibility and advocacy. So this podcast has been great for that. We're hitting over an hour now, so I guess
I think this might be the record. We're heading towards record areas.
Yeah. Well, like I know I could go forever, but I think I might give some Jerry Springer final thoughts for you. And sort of wrap it up. So I guess like I've said this a couple of times through this episode. I think what you're doing at the podcast is really meaningful, and it's building community, it's connecting people from across the world. And I know I'm a big podcast listener in general. I'm more pumped for my Pocket Casts Wrapped than I am for my Spotify Wrapped, to see how many tens of thousands of minutes I logged in podcasts. And I find it really difficult to find queer sport, and especially in a specific queer sport podcast, and finding those stories. A lot of it's academic. A lot of it might be TED Talks style about issues, but very rarely is it someone talking to community and bringing out those stories. And I think what you've created at Pride and Puck podcast is really special. And I know that I've been really proud to be able to support that and be a little part of it. I'm actually really glad that we've got to tell a bit of your story, because I think that that's interesting. I think that everyone has an amazing story, especially with queer identity. And, you know, congratulations on 25 episodes. I'll be back for 100. But, you know, you've built an amazing community, and I just wanted to say thank you. I'm just going to claim that I can talk on behalf of everyone listening. We all want to thank you for creating this amazing podcast and space where we can connect and learn from each other and hear stories. So a big thank you for doing what you do, and keep doing it. And I'll film some content of your first game from the stands so we can upload it to show that everyone starts somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Show everyone that I can talk the talk but not walk the walk.
I didn't say that.
I really appreciate it. It's been an amazing journey so far. As I said at the start, to get into season 3, and I know it's only a monthly podcast. I didn't want to commit to a weekly one. It's just so much workload and trying to do the social media by yourself and record and clip and edit. So I thought a month would be I'd be able to do that pretty well. It's been an amazing journey, and I'm thankful for everyone just giving up their time on a monthly basis to sit down for maybe 45 minutes to an hour to talk about their journey. And I hope it's been therapeutic for people as well to be able to talk about their experience that they might not necessarily tell anyone or many people. So it's really cool, and to get the support from Southern Lights, from Proud to Play, Harbour Lights. This tournament has everything with KO, Seattle Pride Hockey, everyone who's been supportive of it. And also, like, one of the biggest supporters of our podcast is Pride Tape. So to get the support from Pride Tape, who accept collaborations with reels and things like that, and to be able to build something where people want to support it, where it is meaningful, it is sort of well done, I hope. It's really cool. And I've got Jeff McLean from Pride Tape as a guest this season, which is really cool. So starting to get to the higher echelon of people with Jeff, I suppose. Jeff might not want to hear that, but to have someone from Pride Tape. Growing. So yeah, it's really cool, mate. And I appreciate the kind words, and just to create community and find my queer family and friends, and like people like yourself, Kade, that I love you, mate, and I love having you as a friend. So it's really cool.
Yeah. Right. Well, we'll wrap it up there. I'll see you on the ice. Probably see you on the cricket pitch next summer. Yeah.
Yes, that's the cricket. We forgot about the cricket.
Yeah. We'll leave that for another one. That's episode 100.
We'll leave that for 100.
Yeah. Excellent. Thanks a lot for joining my show.
Yes, the new host, of the Pride and Pug podcast.
You can have it back now. I'll throw it back to you as host now. Well done. Love it.
This is the episode 25, quarter of the century, and that was Kade Matthews in the chair as the host. A little bit about myself. I am your host, the normal host, Andrew Macdougall. As I said at the start, you can find us on the socials, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, at Pride Puck Podcast, and also on YouTube. YouTube's the one we're trying to build, so please jump over there, subscribe, likes, comments. It's all good for the algorithm. But that'll do us until next month, episode 26. Another awesome guest coming on. I am Andrew Macdougall. That is Kade Matthews, and we'll speak to you next month. Ciao.